Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. In today's video, we're going to dive into a deeply moving story of love, resilience, and the struggles of building a life from almost nothing. We'll follow Diep, Huyen, and little Maya as they face storms, unfinished walls, and difficult choices, yet never lose hope in creating a true home. It's a story about sacrifice, small victories, and the quiet strength that keeps them going. If you enjoy this journey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss the next chapters we share. The rain came down in heavy sheets, pounding the tin roof that barely held together above Dee's head. He stood still, staring into the distance, his eyes shadowed by days of unrest. Peace felt like a faraway dream. Part of him wanted nothing more than to stay there, to help Huyen finish patching up the fragile house before the storm tore apart what little progress they had made. But another part of him carried a weight he couldn't ignore. Tieu, his former wife, had promised to return, to settle their divorce. She swore she'd come back in a month. That month had long passed, and still there was only silence. Dee tightened his grip on his phone, his thumb hovering just above the call button. His chest felt heavy, restless. Finally, he pressed it, and when the line connected, his voice came out low but unyielding. "Why did you say you'd return in a month? It's been over a month now." He tried to steady himself, insisting that the court would be fair, that dividing assets wasn't something she needed to fear. But deep down, beneath all the tension, his heart whispered a different truth. He was desperate to close this chapter once and for all. He wanted to step forward, to start a new life with Huyen, to give Maya the home she deserved. Outside, the rain didn't let up. It hammered the unfinished roof, rattling the loose tiles like a cruel reminder of how unstable everything was. The house was half a shelter, half a risk, much like his own life at that moment. Dee's eyes drifted toward Huyen. She was there in the storm, her hands busy trying to fix the leaking corner of the house, her movement steady despite the wind and cold. Something surged inside him then, a fierce determination. He couldn't keep dragging this out. Not for himself, not for her, and not for Maya, who was waiting for a real home, not just walls that creaked under every rainfall. The wind swept through, sharp and cold, but it carried with it a fragile kind of hope. The sound of rain pounding against the roof seemed to blend with the beat of his heart, each drop echoing a silent vow. He would end this. He would build again, no matter what it took. His heart was heavy, yes, but it was also alive with purpose. And that purpose was bound to the two people waiting for him to be strong enough to finish what he had started. A softer light broke through the clouds the next morning. The sun filtered gently through the leaves, scattering golden flecks of warmth across Maya's smiling face. She twirled, showing off the brand new dress Dee had bought her. Her laughter filled the air, light and contagious, her eyes sparkling with pure joy. The school's opening ceremony was coming soon, and for Maya, that dress wasn't just a piece of clothing. It was a dream. A small one, maybe, but precious. For too long, she had worn hand-me-downs, clothes that barely fit, colors faded by time. Now, in that moment, she felt like she finally had something of her own. Inside the half-built home, Huyen watched her daughter, her chest swelling with both happiness and ache. She wore the same old tattered shirt she always had, each stitch a reminder of how much she had sacrificed to save every coin. She had grown used to putting herself last, but Day had quietly placed a new pair of pants in her hands, insisting she deserved them. Huyen hesitated, her eyes flickering with worry. "My old clothes are still fine," she murmured. She didn't want to waste, didn't want to feel like a burden. But Dee's smile was gentle, his words calm, urging her to try them on. She hesitated only a moment longer, then her fingers brushed the fabric. It was soft, new, unfamiliar. And with that touch came a sudden warmth, as though some invisible weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Maya ran toward her, hugging her tightly, her voice ringing like a bell. "Mom, do I look pretty in this dress?" Huyen bent down, her hand smoothing her daughter's hair, and nodded with a smile. "Yes, sweetheart, you're beautiful." But behind her smile, her heart ached with memories of hardship, memories she didn't want Maya to carry. Day stood close by, watching mother and daughter with a quiet intensity. To anyone else, a dress and a pair of pants might seem small, almost insignificant. But to him, they were symbols, tiny pieces of love stitched into fabric. Gifts that said, "I see you. I'm here for you." The three of them lingered there, under the sunlight streaming into the unfinished house. The walls were still incomplete, the roof still leaking, but somehow, in that moment, it didn't matter. The joy on Maya's face, the softened lines in Huyen's eyes, the warmth that wrapped around them, it was enough. The rustling of the leaves outside mixed with Maya's laughter, weaving a fragile but unbreakable hope. It was in that hope that they found their strength, each of them silently promising the other, no matter how rough the journey, they would face it together. Dawn crept slowly across the sky, and inside the small kitchen, the air was already filled with the comforting aroma of food. Huyen moved quietly, preparing breakfast for Maya, who sat at the wooden table, her little hands carefully setting aside a portion. "Mom, eat this," she said softly. "I saved it for you." Huyen's smile was warm, but her heart squeezed at her daughter's words. She remembered the doctor's voice, steady but stern, reminding her that Maya wasn't getting enough nutrition. She wanted to insist, to tell Maya to eat more, to worry less about her. Her voice was gentle, but carried an undertone of worry. "Sweetheart, you should eat. You need it more than I do." But Maya only beamed, her eyes bright, her spirit undimmed. "When I grow up, I want to be a principal," she announced suddenly. Huyen paused, surprised. "A principal? Why?" "Because principals have cars." Maya burst into laughter, her small giggle spilling into the room like sunlight. For a moment, the heaviness that usually clung to Huyen's heart lifted, replaced by her daughter's unshakable innocence. Day walked in then, carrying a box of milk. His steps were light, his face carrying that same quiet warmth he always brought. He set the milk down on the table and looked at Maya with eyes that spoke volumes: care, pride, determination. The little family prepared for the school ceremony, their tiny kitchen alive with energy. Maya twirled once again, showing off her dress with a wide grin. "I'll study hard," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. Huyen reached out, holding her daughter's hand tightly, her heart making a silent vow. She would give everything she had, everything she was, to make sure Maya's future was bright. Outside, the unfinished house stood waiting. Its bare walls and patched-up corners reminded them of all they still lacked. But inside that kitchen, in that single moment, they had everything: love, laughter, and a bond stronger than any foundation. Maya darted out into the yard, her dress fluttering behind her like wings. Her dreams were simple, maybe even naive, but they were beautiful, innocent, limitless. Huyen and Day exchanged a glance, a quiet agreement passing between them. Whatever hardships came, they would shoulder them together for that little girl twirling under the morning sun. The warmth of the day wrapped around them like a promise that love could build walls stronger than stone, could create a home even when the house was unfinished. A promise that one day Maya's dreams might not just be dreams, but a life soaring far beyond anything they had ever imagined. The afternoon sun filtered through the branches of the old jackfruit tree, its golden fruit hanging heavy and ripe. Huyen stood beneath it, her eyes tracing every line on its rough skin. She reached out, tapping it gently, listening to the sound. It was late in the season, and doubt tugged at her mind. Would it still be sweet? Or had she waited too long? If I don't sell it now, it'll just go to waste, she whispered to herself. The thought of waste made her uneasy. Every coin mattered. Every small sale carried a weight bigger than itself. She made up her mind. The jackfruit had to go to the market. The road stretched dusty and uneven, but Huyen pressed forward, balancing the heavy fruit with steady hands. The market was already alive with noise and color. Vendors calling out, customers haggling, children weaving through the crowd. She placed the jackfruit down carefully, straightened her back, and called out softly but firmly, "This jackfruit's good for digestion, ma'am. Fresh and ready." But the late season worked against her. Buyers frowned, shook their heads, offered low prices. Still, she didn't waver. She kept smiling, kept trying. Every coin earned was one step closer to Maya's future, one patch closer to finishing the roof over their heads. Back home, laughter rang through the air. Maya squealed with delight as she unwrapped another gift from Diep. A brand new dress, her second one in just a short time. She flung her arms around him, her little voice bubbling with joy. "Uncle D, I love it." Her smile was so wide, it lit up the whole room. Meanwhile, under the scorching sun, Huyen wiped the sweat from her brow, her heart torn between exhaustion and hope. She pictured Maya's shining face, her little girl spinning in that new dress, and it fueled her determination. Each call to a passerby was more than a plea for a sale. It was a step forward, no matter how small. At last, someone agreed. The buyer's tone was flat. The price not what Huyen had hoped for. But still, she smiled. She cut a piece from the fruit and tucked it aside, a silent promise to bring it home for the family, to share sweetness with those who mattered most. As the market noise buzzed around her, all she felt was resolve. The jackfruit wasn't just a fruit. It was proof that she could endure, that she could keep pushing, keep fighting. For Maya, for Diep, for the house that still stood, incomplete, but waiting. Every sale was a victory. Every weary smile, a stitch in the fabric of the life they were building together. Late afternoon settled in, its golden light spilling across the house. The unfinished walls seemed softer under the glow, less like burdens and more like promises waiting to be kept. Diep stood beside Huyen, his hands full of small surprises. He turned to Maya first, handing her another dress. Her eyes widened, her voice bursting with joy. "Uncle D, it's so pretty." She twirled instantly, the fabric catching the light as her laughter danced around the room. Then he turned to Huyen, a pair of pants folded neatly in his hands. She hesitated, just as she had before. "I already have enough pants," she murmured. Her instinct was always to refuse, to save, to sacrifice. But Dee's gaze was steady, filled with sincerity that left no room for protest. Reluctantly, she slipped into them, the fabric new and clean against her skin. For a moment, she felt almost like herself again, not just a mother weighed down by hardship. She gave a small twirl, and to her surprise, a smile crept across her face, rare but genuine. Maya clapped her hands, spinning alongside her mother, filling the half-finished home with giggles. The air felt lighter, filled with something stronger than any brick or nail. Hope. Diep promised then, his voice firm but full of warmth. He would take Maya to school. He would finish the house. He would save and buy a motorbike, piece by piece, step by step. Huyen's eyes softened, gratitude glimmering beneath her weariness. She turned to tend to Bibi, stroking gently, whispering about the warmth they would one day have, about a winter where the cold couldn't reach them. The roof above still leaked. The walls still carried gaps, but standing together, they felt something unshakable. A bond, a shelter stronger than anything they could build with their hands alone. Maya grabbed her mother's hand suddenly, her small voice ringing, "Mom, I'm off to school." Her excitement was contagious, her spirit unbroken. Dee picked up a box of milk, ready to walk her there, his heart steady with resolve. In that simple act, he wasn't just taking her to class, he was carrying her future, carrying their shared dream. The sunset poured over them, painting long shadows across the ground, but also wrapping them in warmth. The unfinished house seemed to breathe alongside them, its broken edges softened by the glow. For the first time, it looked less like a reminder of what they didn't have, and more like a reflection of what they were building together. Maya's laughter echoed into the evening, a melody of resilience. It reminded them that even in struggle, they weren't broken. That love, in all its small gestures, was a foundation strong enough to stand against time. The next morning, the sun climbed higher, bright and unrelenting. Dee wiped the sweat from his brow as he swung the axe into a log of wood. Each strike was sharp, steady, purposeful. He was building a fence, piece by piece, determined to shape something sturdy for the home. Nearby, the new window he had crafted caught his eye. It wasn't perfect, but to him, it was beautiful. Pride shone in his expression as he muttered to himself, "This house will be cozy come winter." Not long after, Huyen returned from the market, her steps heavy, but her face light with relief. She set down the last piece of jackfruit she had saved. The rest had been sold at a lower price than she had hoped, but sold nonetheless. "What matters is it's sold," she said with a smile. that despite her exhaustion, carried quiet triumph.